It's Rock 30, Bill and Jay's excellent podcast, with your hosts, Jay Odom and Billy Quinton. Our special guest this evening is Andrew Greenberg. Let's roll.
All right, here we are, Rock 30. We're on episode number 34 overall. This is season 3, episode 4. Yeah,
I'm
episode
always impressed
4.
that you can keep track of
Well,
those.
I have to do all the ball games with all the stats.
You're
and
the
so
stats
it sits
guy,
in
that's
there.
right.
Yeah, it sits in there. So, but very excited with our guest today. As everybody knows, we got a lot of things happening in Fate, and so we have the mayor of Fate, but he is here also as a citizen.
He
so,
is.
Jay, if you'd introduce our guest.
It is Andrew Greenberg. He is a resident of Fate, Texas, the mayor of Fate, but does visit us today as a concerned citizen here to tell his story outside of his role as the mayor. He's a conservative and limited government advocate who emphasizes the fundamental rights of citizens to live freely and make their own choices. Andrew is dedicated to principled conservative leadership. He's a government and economics professor and is passionate about ensuring that government exists to serve the community.
Absolutely.
There you go.
So we got a professor.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well done.
I agree with all that. So are we done?
Thanks
Thanks for coming, Andrew.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
Well, I have my pocket constitution. Is that what we're doing next? America 250.
I
Come
love
on.
that. I love that. Yeah.
Oh man! So you have been the mayor of Fate for how long?
Since May 2025.
May of 2025. Okay. So how?
So coming up on 1 year.
Okay. So
Man.
it's time goes so fast.
So
It really
give us a
does.
little feedback. How has it? It's just excuse me. Some things that surprised you jumping in.
Well, sure. Well,
Not what you expected. or-
one fun thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, and this likely isn't just Fate, it's cities statewide, but for sure in our county. When you're elected, you pretty much jump right into the budget season. Summer is when you're really hashing out the budget and you're trying to think of things. And it's not one of those, at least at the city level, we don't make some decisions to just fund for another couple of weeks. And then when we need more money, we just decide what to do. You've got to map it all out and you've got to fill the individual buckets as best you can. And so you haven't ever been on council. You're sitting there and you're going, okay, 14 million I'm worrying about. And well, we can just move this money here. And so fortunately with our city staff that we've had great people and not just, I say this not just for me, but I would say this for anybody who has served. You come in, you don't know what's going on, but your city staff can get you caught up to speed pretty quick, and then you can make those decisions. And so that's surprising because you're kind of expecting this honeymoon period where you're going to get to go around and do ribbon cutting.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Let's cut 3 ribbons today, then I'm out. I just want to ease in.
That's
Easy
right. That's
day.
right.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to get free ice cream at the ice cream shop. I thought that's what this job was. And
Yeah, I want to wear the mayor's sash for at least a couple
What's
days.
the monopoly thing about the mayor? It's the sash.
It's
and
a sash, yeah.
What is the mayor on the
I think something like you've been elected mayor or something like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
and you have to.
pass go or something?
Yeah, I forget. Yeah. That's the closest I've come to mayor is Monopoly.
When you were playing Monopoly, did you ever think I will be a mayor?
No, did not have that on my bingo card. I did not.
Got to wear the top hat. It's weird.
Yeah, but it has been great. It's time consuming, but it's also rewarding. There are lots of different things especially when you see when citizens have genuine questions about something. And even if you don't know the answer, to say, hey, you know what? You came to me. I can find that answer out for you. Let me get you that information and go from there. And then just city planning as you plan your community. That's of course an awesome opportunity. I have 3 young daughters, 8, 5, and 3, and so
Wow.
Hey, I love it.
Wow.
I love it though. But when I it gives you a perspective because you start looking at that and you say, what is this city going to look like in 10 years for them, or even 15 or 20? Well, they want to live in the city that they. I grew up in Garland, moved here when I started high school to Rockwall. And so this has kind of been my home. My wife is the well-traveled. She's lived in multiple states, multiple countries. Andrew was born in Dallas, lived in Garland, moved to Rockwall, now lives in Fate. So it's just a steady progression.
Now, did you go to Garland High School?
I did not. I started high school here in Rockwall.
Okay.
2006.
Okay.
So coming up on 20 years. So that's interesting. We were talking about where does the time go kind of thing. But again, ultimately, as I'm looking at that, and I'm going, where are my daughters once they find husbands? Where are they going to live? And so there really is kind of a cool perspective that you have when you're planning out a city and what to do best. It's a lot more than the here and now. You're looking at it long term.
Well, I'll ask you this then. I mentioned this before. My son's a city planner in Roy City, and the biggest challenge he talks about is the growth that is constant. Fate is off the charts growing. So you jump into being mayor. You're not jumping into being mayor of this little town that. Like I grew up in a town that had 6,000 people when I grew up there, and it's still 6,000 people.
Right.
It doesn't. It just stays. The fate is completely off the charts.
Where are we at?
Yeah,
50,000.
No, we're at about 30,000 right now.
30,000. Okay. And so, but it is just immense now all of a sudden. And you still think of Fate as that cute little town that you drive through, and it's not that anymore, at least as far as the population goes. And what's the biggest challenge you have with all that growth?
Well, one of the funny things about that is, so when I was campaigning and some others were campaigning last year, we had just gotten the title, I guess the award of the 8th fastest growing city in the nation. And people would ask, and it was one of those things, that's an award none of us want. we are not, that's not on any of our campaign literature. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think the challenge though is, and I think it's what we saw recently, even in our countywide elections. I think what we're seeing is we know the growth is happening. And in many respects, it's, I think people recognize that it's coming. I think what people want to see is what are the actionable steps that are being taken to make sure it's not going to impact quality of life. Sure, you're going to get some shops or some businesses that you didn't want, some that you do want, but how do you navigate that in such a way where people can say, okay, we're growing, everybody's moving here, everybody wants to move here, that's a great thing, we understand why, but how are we making sure it happens in a way that we're not decreasing that quality of life year after year while expanding and growing?
And that's the challenge Rockwall went through for a number of years, wanting to keep the small town feel, but we're growing, we're on an interstate, right. and so it is a huge challenge. And those decisions, because you've seen some communities that have not made the best decisions, and those communities did not prosper the way I'm sure a lot of them wanted to prosper. So anyway, I want to get back into both of y'all from Garland. And so
I was actually in Rowlett. I just went to Garland High School.
Okay.
Just want to make that clear.
Okay, so you grew up in Rowlett, but went to Garland High School.
My wife is from Garland.
Okay, Allison's from Garland.
Okay.
We never asked this. Where did Allison go to high school?
Garland High School.
Okay, did y'all meet in high school?
We did.
Okay, I didn't know that. All right, and that leads me here to Andrew. Okay, let's talk about you mentioned your girls. So how long have y'all been married? How'd y'all meet? We like to get to know
of course.
All our guests.
Candace and I have been married since 2013, July 2013, and so had a few years before we had kids. I wish it was, we were out seeing the world. Nope, just both working, surviving. But we had Jocelyn. So again, Jocelyn's 8. Violet is our middle daughter. She's 5. And then Caroline is 3. And yes, Caroline is already running the house. It's whatever Caroline wants, she gets. But
one thing too, and I mentioned this before, when those girls, all 3 girls, hit the teenage years, so easy, so fun. Just enjoy it. It'll be they never question you at all. It's always
sure. Right.
That was the advice Billy gave me, and you were so right. I've got 2 17-year-olds.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's so nice.
So I'm hearing they'll love their dad. They never question the rules I set for them.
That's right.
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. They'll be so proud of you when they hit those teenage years. They want you around for everything.
Okay. You want me in all their pictures?
Yes,
okay. Good.
Yes.
No,
I want my parents more involved. That's what you'll get. Yeah, sure.
Well, then this was all worth it, right? Just to learn that.
It's just a cakewalk. So I look forward to seeing how it works out for you.
It's better.
Yeah. So how did y'all meet?
Candace and I are actually high school sweethearts.
Okay.
So we started dating. Our first date was actually Valentine's Day of our senior year. I started dating a couple of days later, and then we went to school together. We went to Lamar University down in Beaumont, and it was it was one of those things that because we dated 7 years. But so much of that was college years, and her dad was always on me. He's like, "Hey, when are you going to put a ring on that finger?" And it was like, "Sir, I promise you don't want me to put a ring on that finger yet before I can provide for your daughter.
Right,
Give me some time to get through this." And so we got married and lived in Rockwall for a while, and then found a beautiful little home in Fate. I had 1 daughter at the time. And so it was a great situation. We had to we needed some help getting pregnant with our first and second. And so once we had our second in our tiny little starter home, we thought, hey, this is perfect. Each of us have our bedroom. And then Caroline was a complete and wonderful surprise. But now that home prices have jacked up like they are, we're looking at it and I'm going, I think this starter home's going to be our home for a while now.
And double the interest rate.
That's right.
So
right,
you're
right.
paying double the price, double the interest rate. It's crazy.
Yeah, and so we joke all the time. We're going to be a nice, close family with one another. but
That's fine.
But I have loved it. It really has been such a. We're in the middle of dance right now. Dance. I've got two girls on the competition team.
Oh, gosh.
And so they absolutely love it. It's got its ebbs and flows. Its peak seasons are chaotic. And you're stressed. Okay, do we have the costumes? Do we have the big bags that we need?
And there's like 19 costumes.
19 costumes. But you know what? Here's the beauty of it. Candace is really good at keeping all that organized. So I show up to the competitions. I show up to the recitals wherever we are, find the snack bar, get myself some snacks, and I sit there and I just monitor the program. Oh, okay. One of them's coming up soon. So I get my phone ready. I watch them. They're good. And then I go back down. And when we're leaving, well, that was great. Let's go out to eat. Let's go have a good time.
That's great.
But
Candace is ready to get home.
Here's what I tell Billy is like, okay, if you've got a kid in football, you go to the game and you watch the game and your kid was there, he played, you go home. We're there we get up, it's dark, 5 a.m. You're there all day. So you've watched about 300 dances and you saw your kid
brutal
4 minutes.
Well, that's it. Berkeley, my daughter she didn't do dance. She wasn't a princess kind of, but she did gymnastics.
Okay.
And I had no experience in gymnastics. So the gymnastics meets, or whatever, gymnastic meet, they last forever. Now, that's not like from sun up to sundown like you're talking, but it is. You're there for hours, and she was in 4 events, and all 4 events totaled like maybe a total of 1 minute, because you do the vault, that's real quick. You do the floor, that's real quick. You do and so that's all. You're there for 4 hours to see her for a minute, you know. Yeah. And they all look the same. I'm like, she nailed it. Wait, what? How'd they get that score? The other girls the same thing. She got.
Do you ever have trouble finding your girls when they all have the same hair? And
that's same hair, same makeup. They have to use the same exact. I mean, and our dance director, I love her, and she will notice. Hey, your lipstick is a shade darker than it needs to be. They are uniform. Hey, it's crisp, it's clean, it's awesome. Wow. Yeah. But sometimes, especially if I'm with my mom will come sometimes, or my grandmother to watch, and they'll go, okay, now which one's Violet? And I'll go, she's on the right. She's on the right side. Yeah.
And then the song ends, and you're like, got it.
Right.
Like,
But I will say with dance, one kind of cool story is that a number of 3 years ago, our dance director knew that I had a theater background and knew that I'm a lover of the arts, and said, well, I have a question for you. Would you like to be the Nutcracker in our production of the Nutcracker? Would you want to do that? And, of course, let me tell you, ma'am, I did never do ballet. Did some stage stuff. I know some stage fighting. Like, that's fine. That's all it's going to be. And so I said, well, of course, this was an opportunity. And so now I'm happy to say it's not just that I get to watch them. Every fall, I actually get to do the Nutcracker with him, and we've done it 3 times now. And so it's been a really cool thing. It kind of kicks off. We do it in right around either the weekend before or the weekend after Thanksgiving, and that really kicks off our Christmas season. And so it's now a tradition that we love to do. And so when I see some of the young boys in dance, I have to recognize, like, okay, how many more years until he's going to be the Nutcracker?
Yeah.
All right, sir, you need to lose interest in this because you're not going to take their dad's spot.
Right. You're in competition with 10-year-olds.
Right.
And see, if they come to me and said, can you be the Nutcracker? I'm like, no, the wife is the Nutcracker. You're talking to the wrong person. This is the wrong guy. But that is so funny. That's great. Because I was laughing, Jay was mentioning too, as a dad, I had a son that played sports, and he went through the whole, deal, and my daughter played volleyball and gymnastics a little bit. But as a dad, you're always like, man, you need to extend more there or whatever. You got to, hey, man, you got to get the head down or whatever. But with dance, do you catch yourself like, that shuffle ball toe, I'm just not happy with that. I think we need to go back and
shuffle
fix
ball
that.
toe. This is what I haven't heard of.
Yeah. You never heard? I had a sister that was in tap dance. That's all I know is shuffle ball toe, something like that. Dance. Yeah, it was tap dance, which to me is all the same. And I know it's completely different, but I'm envisioning your daughter's just there with taps just going 10 pound.
They did do the tap.
Did they do the tap?
That was fun, yeah.
Yeah. But that's all I know for dance. Me and Jay have you're in the arts. Me and Jay, do we ask him the question, the big musical question?
Absolutely, because he'll be on my side.
We'll see.
He thinks movies such as...
Musicals. Movies that are musicals.
They're not musicals. He tries to say that like Blues Brothers,
Blues Brothers
is a musical. A musical is like Les Miserables or something like that. It is.
But they're singing and they're dancing,
Yeah.
and there's music, and it's a part of the plot. I don't know why Blues Brothers gets this bad rap. That's the only musical I've ever watched. So it's actually a musical, and it's probably not a musical.
I guess you could call that a musical.
But I
it's
mean,
it's a movie
right,
with music.
but it's
with a heavy musical element.
That's
okay.
right.
But I don't know that we would maybe go as far as to call it a musical.
What would categorize a musical then?
Well, I mean, Les Mis, and of course, if it's singing all the way throughout, that would
Yeah.
probably be a musical. And I would probably say one where the main plot and the theme and the focus is more on the scores themselves rather than the plot that you mix those in. Think about. This is going way back, but one of the first that comes to mind is something like Hairspray. Mm-hmm. When you watch Hairspray, if you take the music and all of the different pieces, the slow songs, the fast songs, man, that's built around a score.
Okay.
Mamma Mia is built around a score, and then but I don't know,
Because here's the deal.
This is a good
but
debate
Blues
to have.
Brothers is built around their band and their music. As they have to go to different places, and it's
as a plot or the songs themselves.
Yeah, I mean, the plot is, which always confused me. The plot is they have to raise money to pay the taxes for the nun of the house. They grew up in a Catholic house, and I always thought, I thought churches didn't pay taxes. Why are they getting tax money for the church?
Oh, you fat penguin!
This is confusing. This whole plot falls apart all of a sudden.
It all fell apart.
But anyway, okay, all right. So I lose
He
that
said
battle.
it. I've been trying to say it. He said it.
That's a good like Sound of
an
Music.
educated
Is Sound of Music a musical?
Absolutely.
Oh,
it actually
100%.
started
But
as
the plot is the Nazis coming to get them.
yeah, but it was on Broadway before it was even a movie.
Okay, so it has to be on Broadway then. Is that a deal?
Well,
Or in some sort of theater or whatever?
generally, yes.
Okay.
I'm going to go
All right.
yes.
All right. I just think y'all are elitist against Blues Brothers.
Did not.
So we've discussed ballet.
Yeah.
We've discussed musical
Musicals.
theater.
That's right. Yeah.
We have found the formula, though. We have found the formula for what makes it a musical, so that's good.
That's right. Thank you for that.
I'm going to die on
You've
that
ended
hill that Blues Brothers is a musical. I'm going to stay with it. Even though I don't know if I've ever had anybody agree with me, but I'm sticking with it.
Okay, let's go with it.
Yeah.
Go with it.
Yeah.
And then now, you mentioned theater in college. Were you a theater major?
I started as a theater major, did one semester of it, but then fell in love with a political science class, and so flipped right then.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Ended up doing political science and communication as a dual degree, but it was more of I had a really good communication professor. He said, he brought it up in a great way. He said, "Look, are you wanting to act?" And I said, "Of course." And he said, "Broadway? Are you wanting to do commercials? Are you wanting to do TV? What do you want to do?" Said, any and all. And he said, "Well, here's what I recommend." He said, "Don't focus on theater as a degree. If you've got it, and it's going to happen. But put yourself in a position where you have a job to do, so you're making an income while you're auditioning for these roles." And so that's what got me into broadcast journalism through Lamar University's communication department. And then it was kind of like, okay, I'm teetering with that and theater. I think they're working together. But then I had a great political science professor, Dr. Vanderloo, and he made it interesting. He made it engaging. And then I was like, I don't want to drop the broadcast journalism thing. I was enjoying that too. But political science, man, that's when I got hit by that political bug. And here I sit today.
That's very cool.
And how did you get into politics? How did that kind of
like in college, like what
or
in
actual
college or
politics? when you
actually
started?
after so afterward I ended up graduating, and I was a speech and debate coach at Mesquite High School for a number of years. And the way Lamar worked, my senior year, I actually started some classes in the Master's in Public Administration program. And so I had some graduate credits there. Didn't think anything of it really at the time. I was hired in July, and by November was speaking with my principal at the time, and he said, "Hey, I looked over your resume and your transcript. You've actually got some government graduate credits. Would you want to teach dual credit government? You just have to go finish your master's degree so that you can teach." And I thought, oh man, that'd be great. I love the subject. Wasn't necessarily interested in leaving speech and debate because I liked that too. But I thought, yeah, that'd be great, kind of do both of them. Well, finished my degree, started teaching dual credit government. And is when I would really say that desire to go into academia really took off. I really loved that, enjoyed getting to go deeper into the subject. And then, of course, there was always that, since I served as student body president at Lamar University, and so dabbled a little bit with politics there, but of course on campus, very localized, and kind of knew I wanted to get involved. I like the process of it. I know you're not really supposed to say you like politics because that's, turns a lot of people off, but some of us have to like it, right? Some of us have to be involved. And so I knew I wanted to get involved. Ran here in Rockwall a number of years ago and successfully for city council.
Well, let me stop you here because I've got a very funny story, Billy. You probably don't know this. I have never really. I like politics. I like watching it and seeing who's doing what. I'd never gotten really involved. Several years ago, Andrew was running for city council of Rockwall, which we live downtown, and there was a guy downtown that was running against you, and all of us neighborhood people were like, we want our old town neighborhood guy. So I was doing the whole knocking on doors, and
because I was old town neighborhood guy. Who was this? Who was the guy?
It was Mr. Trowbridge.
Oh,
Mr. Trowbridge.
Okay, all right.
So I
know Mr. Trowbridge, or did know him. Yeah.
So I do this little video because I always done videos.
I remember that.
And I was like, our town deserves someone with some experience, not a little kid running things around here. And so several years later, I had been meaning to come up to Andrew and say, do you remember all those years? I picked the wrong candidate. I should have chosen you. I've been waiting to tell you I chose the wrong. Since then I've knocked on doors.
Well, that's the thing, because I remember my son super into politics. So it sounds like what you're saying is my son's life so far too.
Okay.
Because he loves politics. He's worked with Justin Holland and
very cool.
George Bush Jr. or whatever, the third, I guess, and when he ran for office and all that stuff, and so he loves that stuff. He was a part of Trowbridge's campaign. He did Trowbridge's social media and was in the videos. I think you did a video and he was in it.
He was so funny. I was like, your kid is hilarious.
Yeah. And Rodney Webb was in it, as we throw Rodney now out there.
So all of us, everybody was like.
And so, and then
horrible
stuff happened. And then, and so, but that was one of the things that how many people... I mean, I do graphic design. I do all these political campaigns, graphic design. Okay. And so my portfolio had Trowbridge because I did his campaign. And then immediately, once you're like, how do we delete that? Get that off there. I don't even know who you're talking about. I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, I just wanted to interrupt and tell. That's how I know.
Yeah, Andrew. Right. Yeah. Well, I also chose the wrong candidate. Well, so we both will admit that
that's all right.
Okay,
that's all right.
Continue
on. Look, we're here now having a good conversation. So look, it all worked out.
And he's sitting somewhere
for most everybody
in prison right now.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't say it worked out for Patrick, but everybody else
listeners can look it up.
Yeah, we're not going to go into detail about that. Oh my goodness! And thanks for bringing that up, Jay.
Sorry,
that's a nice, fun family fact there. Right. Nice memory there.
One of Rockwall's finest memories.
Oh my goodness! Maybe the most shocking thing. One of the most shocking things I've ever heard. When that news came down, you're like, "What?" Yeah, that was.
Well, because you hear about stories like that, right? I mean, we all hear, so and so's city council member did this, and you think, oh man, I'm glad I don't live there. Yes. And then boom, when your community is rocked with it, it's big, it's bold, and you think, wow, I understand what it feels like for that to happen to where I live.
Yeah, it's so shocking. That and the Luka Doncic trade. I mean, those two things right there. I mean, shocking things. But anyway, man, we're so glad you're here, though.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
And so that led you to moving to Fate.
So we ended up we were in a rental house at the time. So I think maybe 2 years later or so, we found a home in Fate that we loved. And moved in and kind of just did the thing. Candace was staying home with our first daughter. I was still working. Didn't really have an interest or a desire at that time. Was more thinking about just getting involved maybe with the Rockwall County Republican Party. I'm pretty involved with them and just doing some things like that. Wasn't really looking at the municipal scene. And then in 2024, started thinking about it. Unfortunately, 2024 was a rough year for our family. My father-in-law lost his battle to cancer in November. And so that kind of rocked our family. So then wasn't the time to be thinking about that. But then 2025 came along, and here we are today. I ran and enjoyed the process, enjoyed getting an opportunity to get back in. Fate has a much younger, I wouldn't say much younger, but a younger population than Rockwall, and so a lot of what we're doing now, not just appealing to one small group of people. I certainly don't mean that, but it is a growing city, and so putting someone that doesn't want to halt all growth in there, but also recognizes where we can see, maybe some better growth or maybe some more strategic growth would be advantageous. Yeah. So ran and got to connect with a lot of great people, see what kind of businesses were coming in, what they needed, where we could shore up some, tie up some loose ends and strategize with some new things, here and there. And it's been a lot of fun.
Have you had any problem when you are in a community that's growing that fast? You're always going to have that group of people that are like, basically, we got to stop this. This ain't what it used to be. We got to keep, this is the way we've always done it. Group.
Right.
Is that a challenge for you right now?
Interestingly, I would say that most of the people who we would assume have that mentality, it's not so much that we have to stop this, we're not doing it at all, change the clock back 180 degree opposite direction, as much as it is they just want it explained to them what's going on. They want to feel like they're a part of it. They want to feel like it's something that's not going to take them by surprise, which I will say, one thing that we have coming up that is going to be a really good opportunity in Fate, we are kind of tweaking our comprehensive plan. And so we're going to put we'll call it a steering committee together, and that's going to have some citizens on it, as well as some of our board and commission members. And the company that we're going to be working with really prioritizes having events where people get to come, not just in a come hear us talk about what we're going to do, but say, hey, here's a map of your town. Take these sticky notes and go write, what do you want to see? What works? What doesn't work? Mm-hmm. And I think with all of that engagement is what a lot of times people are missing. It's not that growth is going to occur. Of course, if you see an empty lot, and this goes for anywhere in Rockwall, if you see an empty lot, it's only a matter of time, right? Oh, yeah. But it's do I feel like what's coming in, did I have a say in it? Did I know what was going on? Does it seem like there's any kind of strategy or uniformity to how we're growing? And I'm hoping that we can enter into this new chapter, especially as we're modifying that plan somewhat. I'm hoping that we see that more citizens are saying, oh, okay, good, because I'm part of this process now. Kind of unfair, too, because the last time, 5 years ago when this happened, it was right in the middle of COVID. And so it was very difficult for anybody. And so I think there's some pent-up frustration. You've got COVID, you've got the explosive growth, but now we're in a really unique opportunity to make this a community-led, citizen-led, engaged kind of thing. And so I think that's on our horizon.
I'm sorry, Jay.
I was just going to say, kind of tacking onto that, my time on Rockwall Planning and Zoning, I found one of the challenges was always balancing landowner rights with what was good for the city. I'm very Texas. I'm pro, the right of the individual. You've got families that have held on to that land. It's on I-30. They are now ready to sell that land. And then the challenge of like, no, you can't. We're not going to let you do this or this or this. And sometimes it was even in the city plan, which I think they're working on changing, Rockwall city plan. But my challenge on P&Z was like, it meets the plan. It meets this. It meets this. You've got a whole lot of really angry citizens when you place that vote. But I always thought, well, it's for me on P&Z, it's matching the plan. I'm kicking it up. They can use their opinion to say yes or no. But I do feel a sense of duty to the individual landowners that have owned this stuff through generations. So how do you balance that?
Well, I think first it's important to know, and I tell my students this all the time. We recently finished talking about the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, just giving you, again, we were talking about this before the show started. You put the quarter in, you're going to get the whole song.
I was supposed to read that, but I didn't.
right. Well, here, I've got a copy. Whatever you're talking about, whether it's how to form a representative government, how to elect the president, what do we do about a unitary body? Do we want a bicameral legislature? All those different things. A lot of these discussions don't have to be it's either 100% landowner rights or it's 100% the community. A lot of that is actually in the this is hard. It should be challenging because you're absolutely right. Here's somebody who wants to sell their land. They could make a big profit. It's their land, what they want to do with it. But we also would somebody could absolutely say that's true, and somebody could also say, I hope that the city council or the different boards and commissions will plan in such a way that makes my city somewhere I want to live and keep living in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So of course there's disagreement. What I would hope that we started to see more of is people recognizing unfortunately the vote often comes down to, are you going to change the zoning or not? Are you going to approve this or not? It's what do they call it? It's one or the other. But the discussion of what that looks like, balancing those rights, I would say it's a little bit more nuanced because it's a fine line you want to walk, and there are good considerations on each side before you make an individual decision. And I would say that sometimes it's what are your traffic patterns at that time? In other words, if your traffic was a little bit better, you might approve that plan as it stands. With traffic not being better, that might be the reason why you don't approve it now or you approve something later. And so it's not even that a decision that's made today is stoic and unchanging as much as it is the variety of factors that are influencing that decision really change your mindset on what to do in that particular case.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point you make about it's good that it's challenging. I mean, because if you did have black and white, things could really go awry, as far as going one direction or another. So that's a great point, because you look at places like, if I'm not mistaken, Houston doesn't have zoning.
That's right.
And it's just chaos there. They don't really have a say in a lot of it. And so I think everybody points to that as like, yeah, see, we can't have that, know, but but we got to be sensible. We got to have common sense. The problem is common sense is not a black and white deal sometimes. And that's a great point too about the traffic and
that has to be considered. And I love that idea. It's not black and white. And I respect what all of you guys do. And I think more people need to maybe come to some city council meetings, come to planning and zoning meetings, read what's going on, because it's very easy to just say, they put that IKEA there and they don't care about the town. But there's so much that goes into it, And
but I think that's everybody to a degree, because we only see like 10% of probably something that is being done, because we only see it from our viewpoint. We're not in there in the mud and all that making it work, but it's so easy for us, especially now. The thing I come back to is that there's not as much of an excuse to say, well, I didn't know about this and that, because the city council meetings, are they available online?
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
You can watch them live.
You can watch them live, or you can go watch it later.
People don't want to spend time doing that.
Exactly.
They want to get on their keyboards.
Right. And we tend to do here's my angle. I'm just going to try to manipulate everything to my angle, as opposed to maybe I should see everything and then come back. That's my deal. But there's no excuse anymore that you can say I can't go to the city council meetings. Because almost everywhere it's televised or it's online, and you can watch it. And
that's right.
I think it's a good thing. There's a lot of social media and stuff I think is bad that hurts us, but I think that's one of the many positives. Also, with all
it definitely expands the access to that information, which is a good thing.
Right. Okay, so let's get into. There's a couple. Obviously, one of the main reasons you're here is the recall that's going on.
What is this?
Yeah, have you heard? You haven't heard about it? Yeah. And so it's the movie Total Recall. It's a really good movie. And so
I thought that was clever. I don't know what you thought.
I enjoyed that. I was like, oh, Jay's going rogue.
Yeah.
Jay's doing Total Recall movie stuff.
I always feel like you probably would have put a disclaimer. I did not design this graphic.
That crosses my mind.
because you're the pro and I'm just throwing stuff in there.
No, you're fine. It's fine. It's our deal. But no, I've done that with political campaigns. Like I'll do somebody's campaign and then they will decide, well, he did this last campaign. We can just do it from here. We'll just add a few things and it goes awry. And I really want to say, put a disclaimer that I didn't have anything to do with that. I didn't do that, But anyway, okay. So as you know, we had Codi Chinn on a previous podcast, and we're going to air both of these and let everybody make their decisions and everything. Of
course.
Okay. I'd like to start, and Jay, you're going to, you have a lot of questions too. I'd like to start with your relationship with Codi when she first got elected and how that went when she was on city council and how that went.
So I knew Codi very little. We had met a few times, and she was the preferred candidate at the time. She was the conservative candidate in her race, and I speak especially when she got to her runoff, because that originally started with 3 candidates. None of them got the majority, the outright majority. And in Fate, because our terms are 3-year terms, you have to get a majority. So a lot of times you could run 3-4 candidates. And I think Rockwall used to be this way, or they're working to change it. But in Rockwall, you didn't have to get to a majority. You just had to get more.
Yes.
But you had to have the plurality of that. First past the post. Here we go. Here's some more government. And this is awesome. I love this. Come back.
Always
come back all the time.
Yeah.
And so knew her a little bit. Didn't really know her that much though until I started running. So the only thing that I would see from a council perspective is, and I would say overall, there was a growing. I don't even want to say dysfunction, as much as there were definitely some competing personalities on council, with some of our former council members that were there, former mayor, incoming Codi, and then Mark Hatley. And so there was definitely something brewing there. But again, I say as my father-in-law was again on the decline, was not really involved with a lot of what was going on in the city from a council and council relationships perspective. Sure, I would see what was going on here and there, but didn't really focus on that. And then as far as the relationship side, when I decided to run, this was in the fall.
And she's already on city council.
She's already on city council.
Let's make
Yes,
that
sir.
clear.
Yes, sir. And so when I started to run, there was a kind of an excitement, of course, because a lot of her supporters, at least initially, were backing me. And so from a policy or from a political, and to be clear, we all know that municipal races are nonpartisan. We can put that in air quotes, because that's absurd. That everything, judges in our state are partisan, and they're not partisan elections everywhere, but here they are, where you want a non-biased, nonpartisan. They're partisan here, but suddenly our city government, it's almost like, well, it's completely irrelevant how you lean on a budget issue or what you think about these kinds of issues. But anyway. So a lot of her supporters, a lot of people, the base and Fate kind of coalesced around me, and so we spoke a little bit. Again, it wasn't a whole lot, and then especially as we got into the campaign, she was she didn't come out and endorse me, or I didn't ask for it. Because she did a couple of forums herself and at her home. And so I think she was trying to kind of step back and make sure that every candidate kind of stayed in their own lane. It didn't, she didn't put her thumb on the scale one way or the other until the end. But that was kind of our relationship up to that point. And then early on in council, we got along great, and she asks great questions on council. There's not a lot of even today, and again, I'm speaking just as a citizen. I'm bringing in mayor stuff, but this is not anything, no executive session or stuff is being discussed. But a lot of our votes, a lot of our decisions on what we want to see in Fate are the same. We have very little disagreement from a policy standpoint. But there's a difference in what happens behind the dais and what happens off the dais and what happens in the community. And so that's where our relationship, kind of took a turn, and that's where you see us where we're at now.
One of the things what I really want to get to is the reason that you and those others that wanted to do the recall, what the real reason is, because the only thing that I've heard is unbecoming behavior, and I hope that it's more than that, because where I'm coming from, to me, that feels very undemocratic, because you can read tweets by Trump that are pretty darn bad, make fun of people, their weight, very unbecoming. So for me, when I say, okay, we're going to get rid of someone on city council because she's unbecoming or makes mean tweets, or, that's what's hard for me to say. It's hard for me to find a reason. I haven't heard a reason, I guess. And that's what I really would like to hear from you, is how did it get to that point where you're like, she's got to go?
Absolutely.
And we're going to do something that's never been done in this county before. It's that bad.
Absolutely. The first thing I would say is, and probably the most important, and I think where a lot of citizens don't recognize this is that the recall process is part of our charter. And the recall process just says that you have to form to briefly go over the process, a petitioners committee has to form. So you have to find at least 10 citizens who want to move forward with a recall process. It doesn't mean if you find 10 citizens that somebody's recalled. It's just the first step in the process. Then you have to go through the petition phase where you have to get 30% of the amount of the vote in the last municipal election, and they have to sign a petition, they have to be valid, and so forth. And so once you have that phase, then your city council will vote. It's a purely ministerial vote. They'll vote to put that individual on the ballot in the next uniform election. In this case, it's May. The conduct unbecoming, because I've heard this a lot in the community, and people want more answers and people want more. And I'm happy to provide the turning point for me, and I'll discuss that in a second. But I do think it's important to note that we had over 400 signatures. Those 400 people had reasons that were unique to them, that they felt Codi's level of representation had fallen below the threshold of an elected official. And so while I appreciate people saying, hey, I want to know the answer, I would say that's going to have to be a question, and any time a recall is done, that would have to be a question that individuals answer. The recall process does not require, the part of the charter does not require a specific reason. It does not require any legal wrongdoing. It doesn't require a charter violation. It simply is a tool that citizens can use to say, if I feel like this representation is no longer at the level that I want, do I A, wait until the end of a term, or B, is there an actionable step I can take right now? And I think that's a beautiful thing to have that opportunity. If citizens want to get engaged, that's a great and positive thing. Even if, and I would say to most people, the reason for wanting to support a recall is going to be different among two people. Or I think this is unbecoming behavior of somebody that I've elected to serve in a leadership capacity. Well, somebody else might say, well, I don't think that quite reaches the bar. Well, the beauty is the voters now get to decide that in May.
Okay, so let me ask you, who started, it's citizens, so that started this recall. You said you had to have 10 citizens.
At least 10.
At least 10 for the charter. So were the citizens you and others, or was it just other people that came to y'all? How did that get started?
So yes, I'm one of the 10 what are called on the petitioners committee. That's the group that goes forward with an affidavit to the city. So I'm one of those members. The other members are members of our community that supported Codi in the past, that didn't necessarily support or was against her in the past. It's kind of a collection. And I will say, kind of in going into my involvement specifically, where this has come from. And again, you'd have to ask, unfortunately, I can't speak for all 400 signers, right, and I can't even speak fully for the 10 that signed. We had 11 people on the committee specifically, but there were talks of a recall as early as about 2 months into her term. And again, a lot of things were said here that I wasn't picking up on at the time, but a lot of that was the way in which she would talk to her constituents. Okay. The kind of that, I understand, you can have pushback. There have been untruths told about me. There have been some things where somebody says, one joke that I recognize, I remember talking to people, not just in Fate, but everywhere. There's this joke among council members that say, well, when those developer checks start coming in, we'll buy a bigger house or we'll buy a boat or whatever. And so I understand what those jokes are now, but people genuinely think that. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate, but there's a way I think you respond to people that it has to meet a certain level. It has to meet a bar. And if it doesn't, if that representation no longer is established for you, is there an opportunity you have per your charter? Some charters have recall provisions, some don't. Is there a way that you can seek to rectify when you don't feel like you have representation that you want? So there were, again, it started back in the shortly after she got on. I don't think anybody would disagree with this statement. So what I'm about to say shouldn't be too controversial in this kind of space. Codi is a very abrasive individual online. She acknowledges that herself. I think where people, including myself, started to see that as a major problem is in some of the specific responses. There were times where somebody would have a disagreement with her online, and it would be talking about, I could cure your STD, and you'd still be mad at me. Oh, but wait, you have to get laid first to have gonorrhea. Statements like that, telling people, pull your skirt down. I can see your vagina.
I got that.
You might have
received
to.
it. Me and Cody have gone at it. Previous.
Okay.
And so that was the skirt thing came my way. Yeah.
Okay. And so and I don't want to necessarily. I don't have a list of here's every single thing that was said and here's why it's bad. But I find it very telling. One thing I think is very interesting here is the recall effort was started largely by the same group of people that supported her. Mm-hmm. And there were some back and forth times where it was, she was saying, well, they know who I was when they elected me. And the response has been, well, no, we didn't. We didn't think you would turn on us. We didn't think that you would use threatening language, use intimidating language, insult citizens. And so that unfortunately just kind of grew and it grew. And I would say, especially once being elected mayor, there wasn't a week that went by that I didn't hear of something or was sent a screenshot from somebody that would say, is this appropriate behavior? And I was talking to somebody, again, this was even before the recall specifically started, but I was talking to a group of people and the thought came to me and I said, here's a question. If everybody acted that particular way, and not even on Cody, not even on me, not even on a member of council, but if everybody acted in that same way, had that same pattern of behavior, would that be something good? Is that something where we would say, it is good to be represented by 7 people who insult me when I disagree with them? Is it good to be represented by 7 people that will mock me when I ask a question? Or even if I get a little bit, if I push back a little bit on my elected official, is it good to have 7 elected officials who think, well, you started it, so I'm going to finish it now? Is that a good thing? And I say for me, I say no. I think I can speak for some of the petition signers that say no, that's not. And so what do we do about it? Well, again, there were rumblings. And then in December, what really made me start to think about this, teaching government, one of the things I talk to my students about all the time is that representative government has to mean something more than just we show up and vote. It can't just be that we don't have a king that makes decisions. We have people who we elect. And when we do our campaigns and elections study and we do those modules, we talk about this and we talk about why it matters for citizens to be involved, what we expect from our leaders, not just in getting that policy to us that we want or advocating for the specific beliefs that we have, but also in how they are representing as a whole. Representation is not just what was your vote. It's a lot, right? Which is why we hope and dare I say even expect our representatives to come to our community events, come to our backyard barbecues, show up when we're doing police dedications or all sorts of different things, right? There's a lot more to what it means to be an elected official. For me, what really upset me was when in December there were rumblings about a potential recall coming. It had not happened yet. Nothing official had been moving forward, but there were kind of the talks. And Ms. Chinn came on Facebook and said, if anybody's associated with our very own, she calls me the Nutcracker in Chief, which I kind of like that actually. That's a pretty cool title. I may or may not make my daughters call me Nutcracker in Chief. But when she said if you think at all you're associated with our Nutcracker in Chief, no one is going to get out unscathed. I'm coming for all your throats. And that was a flip for me, because at no point in time should an elected official, even if they're joking, even if they talk about how, well, obviously it was metaphorical, that is inappropriate behavior. And I think that when I said, hey, I think that this is the point where we say no, we do not think it would be good in fate if we had 7 members of a council who, when there was a potential legal right of the citizens to engage in the democratic process prescribed by the charter, to be told by those elected officials, you're not getting out unscathed, I'm coming for all your throats. I think that that's dangerous. I don't say that as the mayor. I say that as a citizen in a city looking at that, saying, I don't want to tolerate that. And as it happened, the correct number of people in our city agreed, and so she's now on the ballot in May.
Did you feel that as a physical threat?
So did I think that I was going to be harmed physically? Not necessarily, but I also know, and again, there's information out there. We have, if anybody wants to see our February 2nd and February 9th council meetings, there were a few people who at great risk came and explained kind of what has happened with them in the past and their kind of involvement with Codi Chinn. But there's also a lot of intimidation that goes on. Is someone going to make a video? Is she going to make a video about you? I'll say this was post recall, admittedly, but she made a video about a specific person and made up lies that she was that this particular person was getting drunk all the time, was going to the bars without her husband, and when you think about what that can do in terms of damage to your reputation in the community, that can be as equal of a threat, I would say. At the end of that post, I think she said something like, "I'm a hammer, all you are nails, and I'm a hammer, and I'm best when I have a nail." And again, I would just stress, most of the time when Trump says that kind of language, he's referring to parts of government or the swamp or even other elected officials, which, hey, to be an elected official, you have to have thick skin. That's not my problem. If Codi wants to be upset with me, if Codi wants to come after me, that's one thing as an elected official. But when you're going after citizens and when you're saying this about citizens, and I know some citizens who did take that as a physical threat and were scared and took measures in terms of, buying upgraded security for their homes, that's a problem. And so that's when I knew, hey, I can't just sit here and say, we'll just wait till the next election. If there's a tool in our tool belt we can use from our charter, let's try it. And ultimately, I want to say too, it's up to the citizens at this point. So it's not the Andrew Greenberg recall. It's not the group of 11 on the petitioners committee recall. This is a recall that the citizens will get to decide. If the citizens say, hey, I get it, that's language I don't like or I wouldn't use or I wouldn't want my family to use, but I don't think it meets the bar of conduct unbecoming of a council person, of an elected official, they'll vote to keep her. And that's actually a great thing. The democratic process worked, and we see what the citizens of Fate are willing to tolerate and what they're not. I think and if they say, no, we don't want that, then we'll know that answer too.
To push back on you a little bit,
Sure.
Play devil's advocate. Can you understand the people that say, I hate her. Everything she says is disgusting. She's talked about people, she's lied about people, but you know what? I don't think that's American to say, throw her out. Why? When I was waiting to hear a reason, I wanted to know that she robbed a bank or broke a law or took money from a developer. What do you say to those who say she can say and do whatever she wants, but don't vote her back in because she's crazy? A lot of people have that feeling of like, just because you think she acts crazy, or those citizens think she acts crazy, like they think Trump acts crazy and
Right.
all the others, it's not a good enough reason to say we're taking you out, because that can be dangerous, and then that can be used the other way around, which that is, as we know, in process. And when does it
Absolutely.
stop?
So to that point, where I would push back is on the original premise, and that is nobody has thrown her out. It would be the voters who would decide to remove her from office. So the 400 plus people that signed the petition, any one of them would say, I'm assuming would say, yes, I will be voting to remove her in May. But if and I'm just using this as an example, if there are 401 people who have said, we don't think that what she's done is bad enough to remove, well, if they go out and they vote to keep her in, she'll win. So nobody's voice has been lost in this process. Nobody is going to lose their opportunity to get the exact government they want. This just provides an opportunity to effectively shore up a level of representation that the community, if they vote for it, would rather have.
That makes sense.
And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't like what she says. Okay, she goes, I think, crosses the line a lot, and I think also that it bothers me when there is debates, and this happens online all the time. And again, we can always go back to social media and everything. That I don't know of anybody's mind that's ever been changed on social media when they go back and forth. I don't think anybody's ever said,
never win.
"Boy, when you called me that name and then threatened me, boy, that changed my mind. I think I'm going to go your side now." That doesn't happen. I think it's cheap, to be honest with you, when people do that. When they call, I was not happy when she's calling me names, and I'm sitting there just discussing things that I knew she was not right about, that she said as facts that were not facts. But the other side of me says she got elected being that way. She was that way before she went into office, and enough people thought, yeah, I'd want her on I'd rather have her in office now with that. What would you say to? There's two things I got here. One, I worry that if you start doing recalls on something that is just because of her very foul language and way she acts online, and I'm assuming at times probably in person too. I don't think all this is online. I think there's probably been face-to-face. She's probably gotten uptight with people. What keeps others from saying, okay, well, that thing in Fate, they got that person out because they didn't like the way she handled herself. This other guy, I don't like the way he's voted or done. Let's do a recall on that guy, and let's do it. We start throwing recalls out just because, and let the voters decide, just because we just don't like the way things are going. I worry a little bit about that because right now, what Jay said, she didn't do anything illegal. She's done things exactly. I agree with you 100%. That's unbecoming. I agree. It happened to me. But it's also not like they didn't know what she was like when they elected her. The other thing I want to ask is, that thing about if people start throwing out recalls just because they don't like a person, or was there ever a time y'all talked about, hey, let's meet with Codi and ask her, can you please tone it down? Can you please stop doing this? And give her the points you just said, which I think are 100% correct, that you shouldn't treat citizens like that. You shouldn't call them names if they disagree with you. Because to me, I think it's a cheap tactic when you argue with somebody and then you start calling them names. I think that means you don't have an answer, or that you can't control your emotions. You may have an answer, but you can't control your emotions. And you think demeaning somebody makes your point when it never does. So what do you say to that? Like, are you worried about others that could throw out recalls? And did y'all ever talk to her at 80 point?
So to your first question, am I worried that other people would just start throwing out recalls now? So as you kind of mentioned, so there's an active recall in process for 4 members of our council right now.
Exactly.
And we don't know yet if it will succeed to put us on the ballot. But you know what? Let's say it even does. Mm-hmm. Let's say it does. How would I look at that as problematic if, given that we have an engaged group of citizens who have decided that this is the level of representation they want, and following the city charter, it sounds to me like where the discussion would need to go, which I think it's a beautiful thing, involves, I'd rather have engaged citizens than apathetic citizens, 100%.
Yes.
But it sounds like, and to your point, I think that perhaps this is where a good opportunity would be, and I would even advocate make it after whatever's going to happen in my own recall and 3 of the others on council, so that nobody can claim I'm doing something, to benefit me. But maybe we have a sit down, and it would have to be city by city. You don't do this large scale, but maybe we sit down and we look at our charter and we say, do we want to tighten up or amend that process? Because we can do that, and we can do that every 2 years. Well, what's interesting, and I think this is a very almost the irony of this, is that happened the same year I was elected, May 2025. There were some propositions that were going to amend our charter. Well, one of the discussions that occurred later, earlier that year, or I think maybe late 2024, was the idea of recalls. And it was mentioned and it was discussed to increase the threshold from 30% to 50%. Mm-hmm. That's how many voters you'd have to have, or petition signers, that before you could move forward with the process. And that was declined, that was changed. And the reason being is, hey, this is a democratic process and this is how to hold people accountable. And I will say too, just because I do think it's kind of funny, that a lot of the people who originally were the anti-Codi recall, saying that it was part of an undemocratic process and they thought that it was ridiculous and all that, are some of the ones that not only advocated to not change the recall charter language to keep it the way it was, and are now pro-recall for me and the three others.
You can't have it both ways.
And that's my point. That's what I wanted to get to, was that now all of a sudden it seems it's a retaliation recall as opposed to not actual things like. And now she stated, to be fair, when Codi was here, she said, I have nothing, she's not on that, what do we call it, the committee or whatever to do that. The petitioner's committee. She said she did not have anything to do with it. But clearly, it looks like somebody's decided, well, they did it to us, we're going to do it to them. And that's what I worry about as we move forward with other communities. And we've already seen an example of it, it seems to me.
Because it's all at a cost of the 30,000 people who live in Fate. Mm-hmm. I feel like I and this is something I wanted to address with you. I had a realtor I was speaking with the other day. I do mortgage loans, and she had some folks coming from out of state, and she said, "Well, I'm not going to show them Fate. I'm scared they'll Google what's going on there. I'd be embarrassed." Well, and so it's like all this craziness, and it feels like I'm going to get her out. Now we're going to get them out. And meanwhile, there's 30,000 people who are just trying to live,
Absolutely. And to that point, I would say one of the concerns about, because of course I've been asked, why not just wait until the next election cycle? And one of the things that I kept hearing over and over again before, because as far as being part of a recall committee to try and get somebody out, I'm trying to look for as many off-ramps, as many ways to exit from this, and just do it, or actually not do it, but let's see if we can make something work. The issue that I kept running into was listening to people say things like, in another year, if she wants to run for re-election, nobody's going to run against her because look at how she targets people. Okay. And so then you're looking at another year of her term plus 3 more years, assuming she runs. And again, this is a huge assumption here that she would even want to run. But then what do? You talk about realtors, and you talk about some of that. And here's what's going on in Fate. One of the big concerns is 4 years of citizen berating, is 4 years of intimidating citizens, insulting citizens. Is that good for Fate? And so again, this is where it also goes to, there's never really a time that 400 plus people sit down to say, okay, here we're hashing out, this is the reason, or this is the rationale behind a particular recall. As much as it is, these are the thoughts that are going on in people's minds. With respect to the I don't want to call it a revenge recall, because the people themselves that are doing this recall against me have said it's not about revenge. They have their concerns. So real quick, what are the concerns they've stated? Because I can't imagine what the what legitimate concerns would be that they would want to recall you. There are some concerns that they have raised with some charter violations. They've said that myself and some of the others have violated, that I'm not transparent, that none of us are transparent, that we're moving Fate in a direction that we shouldn't go. I will be hosting some town halls to discuss and say anybody's more than welcome to come ask questions. I've tried to be as transparent as possible. In fact, most recently, just while we're on this topic, if you'll permit me 60 seconds, there were some ethics complaints.
We're timing you.
Oh, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Never. Give me 5 minutes and I'll come in under that, I promise. Does that count as my 60?
Oh, yeah, now you're on the 45 seconds. So
they say I reclaim my time.
I want to reclaim my time.
There we go. There were some ethics charges. A former council member filed ethics complaints against myself and 2 others. And again, as part of the process, and a lot of people, it's unfortunate, a lot of people don't understand the process of how these things work, because a lot of times people think that just as the mayor or even a city council member, I just sit there and somebody says, all right, sir, here's the situation. What do you want to do about it? And I say, we'll go this way, or I will go this way.
Right.
Man, that is so far from the truth. We have a council manager form of government. Our city operates under a weak mayor model. My job is primarily to run the meetings and sign the official documents and serve as kind of the head of state at any official event.
Correct me if I'm wrong, your vote doesn't mean any more than another vote.
Right. No, I can't veto.
Right.
Now, if we want to talk about some charter changes, no, kidding for whoever's watching. I'm not trying to absorb more power. But the process is the city attorney reviews the ethics complaints and then aids the council in deciding, because it's ethics, it's not a legal issue. It's not even a charter violation from the standpoint that somebody could file maybe a civil to go after somebody in civil suit. It's, we think you violated a code of ethics, and our code of ethics is listed in the charter. And so it's not like you could just say, well, I think that action was unethical. No. It's here are the ethics that you have to abide by. Mm-hmm. And so the city attorney is supposed to aid the council, and the council decides, are we going to hold a formal investigation to go deeper into these ethics complaints and see what's going on? Our city attorney, because she's been involved with some of this, said, hey, I think it would be best to recuse myself. That way nobody can say a bias one way or the other. I thought that was a brilliant move. And she brought in outside counsel. That outside counsel then looked at everything and determined that there was no merit to continue with an investigation. Well, we heard that in executive session. I didn't want to come out from there and just say, well, we talked about it in executive session, so now let's vote. No, we're not going to investigate myself. No, we're not going to investigate the other two. Instead, we had a vote. We waived our executive session privilege, which allowed us to discuss anything and everything in executive session. And I read verbatim the memo from the outside counsel, the outside attorney, that said, hey, here's where these ethics complaints fall short. And so I read each of those where he says, it is my recommendation is to not pursue an investigation, as there's nothing here, as there's no charter violation specifically mentioned. And so, again, the fact that some are still saying, oh, well, he's violated the charter. I mean, I would love to know what that is. Mm-hmm. Nobody has reached out for even just an explanation from me on what was going on, or any of the others. But as far as I would say this, I would even go back to it. If I alone am the one that sets the standard of what truth is or what the fact is, well, then we're getting dangerous, right? Yeah. That's not how we want government to operate. And so, as long as this group of people who want to recall me are following the charter, I look at it and say, hey, it puts a heavier burden on me to then go show, no, I didn't violate anything. Here's the proof that I have, or here's the evidence that exonerates me. Yeah, I have to work a little harder. I have to do a little bit more. But we don't want a whole bunch of politicians who are going, well, you elected me. I didn't want to have to work hard. I didn't want to have to answer for anything. Right. No, hey, if that's part of the process, and if at the end of it, whether I'm recalled, whether I stay, if more people feel like, hey, there was more transparency, there was more accountability, that's a great thing. My hypothesis is that regardless of what happens in May with Codi, regardless of what happens with this recall, I think that our next charter review process, this is going to come up. And I think that people are going to want to make some changes, which again is part of that democratic process. So at the end of the day, it all kind of works out.
I like the 50% thing, because that really does make sure that we got enough people that are really concerned about this. Okay, and one thing that I will ask you about that you mentioned when you said, listen, I get what you're saying 100% about Unbecoming and the things that she has posted and said and threatened and all those things. But you said, but also, what if she gets reelected? Well, my thing on that is every person that runs for office has a strategy on how they want to get elected. You did it. Everybody does it. If her strategy is to call everybody names and to be very abrasive, and it works, who are we to say you can't do that anymore?
I would completely agree if the reason why it worked was because there was lack of citizen engagement or citizen involvement.
Because they were scared.
If people fear, and again, I want to be very clear on this. This was after the recall process had started, but the official affidavit that was submitted to the city, Codi released that when somebody said, well, who's on that? She released it, which had everybody's names, everybody's addresses, and that was a huge thing. And doxing has been thrown around, and whatever the legal definition is or is not, there's a I would say a standard, once again, that was not followed in the target of a recall. Well, here's who everybody is, ladies and gentlemen. Again, if anybody's intimidated based on that, if anybody feels like, oh my gosh, what did I do? And now they're a little nervous to be engaged in the process, that's where I would have a problem. Okay. If somebody looked at it and it was like, man, that guy's a smooth talker, so he's probably going to win anyway. I don't want to run against him because I don't have that ability to talk to people, and he's got more time on his hands. My job prohibits me from giving the time I'd need. That's one thing. when people are saying nobody's going to run against her because who wants to be the direct object? And I'll point out, it's not speculation. We all know there are specific instances where she will target specific people. And if you don't want to be involved in that, if you don't want to have to deal with that, a lot of people are going to have a hands-off approach. And I don't think that makes good governance.
I got you.
Let me switch gears. I don't think it's necessarily related to the recall, but the recorded phone calls that have made the rounds and been online. Tell us the source. I heard that you released those to someone locally, that they weren't requested record-wise. How did those become public?
And let me go back and even say the reason I recorded our call in the first place is because there's some information, and now anybody can go listen to it. There was some information that we started to discuss on that phone call that I thought was particularly damning, or at least
Real quick,
troubling.
what call? Let's who's talking on this call?
Cody and I are speaking to each
All
other.
right.
This is that's the one recording. I mean, the cache of recordings. There are some from a city council member and our city manager, and then there's the call between Codi Chinn and myself. And those are all open records now, and those have been released. The reason I started to record is because some claims were being made, some items were being discussed that were making me a little bit uncomfortable. I started feeling like I don't want this to potentially come back and get skewed. Unfortunately, there's an element of trust that has to occur, and Codi has mentioned in the past in screenshots to people online. Again, she's engaged in it where she's released information, or at least threatened to release phone calls that she's had with people, or I have all the text messages, just wait till I release them. And so I knew, and even when I was elected, I was advised by several people, hey, make sure you're either not alone with her if you talk about something, or record just for protection, just so that you can have that protection there. When we were talking about this, the one device I had that wasn't my phone that I was on was my city phone. And so I picked that up and pushed the record button, and it was so that I had a copy of it should anything happen. Had no intention of releasing it, had no intention of using it to embarrass her or anything like that. It was protection for me. Well, after some other events, not necessarily related specifically to Codi, happened, we were hit with some open records requests here and there, and as that was my city phone, the recording on it immediately became city property.
Okay.
Well, I'm not about to delete that.
Right,
I'm not about to alter it or amend it or edit it or anything like that. And so when I was asked to provide any recordings that I have, I submitted that. That's where it I think one of the shifts focused to what those recordings meant. Why did we as a council vote to release them? And again, I would just say it was never my intention to want to release these. I wasn't looking at it going, boy, one day we'll be at a council member and I'll get to vote to release this, and then look at what happens. As much as it was, this is just what I have to protect me, to make sure that if anybody says something about my involvement in the process of some decisions that were going on in Fate, I have a clear record here of what I knew, what I didn't know, what was said to me, what wasn't said to me, etc. And so when claims are being made about my involvement on a level or specifically referencing potential charter violations, my thought was, let's just release this. If we release it to everybody, let them listen to it. I say some things on there that it's not like I'm sitting there going, boy, that's the best speech I ever gave. I love it. Of course not. But I would rather the truth be out there and people can go and listen to it for themselves, understand what was said, who said it, claims that were made, and let that be the truth in the room, rather than just, well, he said, she said.
I want to ask you something. I want to give you a chance to respond. I've
Sure.
spoken to, I did listen to the recordings myself, and spoken to many members of the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community that were really hurt by some of what was said.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to kind of give you a chance to respond to that, if you understand why they felt some of those remarks were anti-Semitic. Something that also concerned me, I wanted you to address, is there is a local leader in Rockwall that is Jewish, And so she became part of that conversation. So I know a lot of it was like, we're against the Israeli government. I can't believe they're doing this. I can't believe they're sending money. You said we should keep that money and forgive student debt, maybe. And I know all of this was, a conversation between you two, which is what makes it so different. And
yeah.
But my question, I know the response is, well, I don't agree with everything Israel's doing, but that doesn't mean I don't like the Jews. My question is, what would this person in Rockwall who happens to be Jewish, why would they be tied in with that? But most importantly, what concerned me was with you being on the forums committee chair, indicating on there, hey, if she runs, if you run against her, I will be in charge of saying the questions. I could bring up the Israel thing. So I know I just spit out a lot, but I wanted you. But I was upset, and many that I know were. So
Sure.
I wanted you to respond. So.
Let me start with the overall topic of analyzing the Jewish thing. And yes, to be clear, I hope it comes across as part of that conversation that it wasn't necessarily voting to forgive student loan debt. That's exactly what it should be. But almost like we're spending all this money.
Yes.
I think that one of the reasons why we're seeing a split, and I'll say even in the Republican Party on this Jewish issue, is because a lot of people are starting to look and question what is our level of involvement in another nation and what is it doing for the country. And I think even America First was mentioned. And really, what does it mean to be America First? I think, and not just from my background, but from what I do as my professional career, and even in politics right now, there should never be anyone that shies away from a genuine conversation, even if it means, hey, this is what we've been doing for years and years and years, and now we're going to pull back. Or now we think that, hey, maybe even our allies, I think it's totally appropriate to ask the question, is there a potential that we're being taken advantage of? Or is there a potential that we're doing a little bit more than we ought to at the expense of some of our own people, our own citizens here? It doesn't have to be an anti, and we probably spoke to the same person. I spoke to some people too, and they even said that as far as my statements were, I think they said, they'd want to know more. They said they weren't anti-Semitic, but I don't think that in that context, I would be happy to share my thoughts in another opportunity. Of kind of what it means to be America First. And truth be told, I think Cody and I would agree on some of that, where we would not agree on some of it. And so I think that we have to be careful that when serious issues are discussed, and obviously this is a serious issue, that we can't allow the way in which somebody is addressing an issue like Israel to be, well, if you want to pull funding, that must mean it's an anti-Semitism mentality, or because you're saying. I mean, I heard somebody say, I think it was it Christ is King now has kind of turned into a negative connotation, and that can't be used. America First. We have to be really careful that a term is not hijacked to mean one thing or mean something else. Now, let me go to the forum committee thing, because this has been a topic of conversation that I've enjoyed getting to have with people and clearing some of that up. The first thing I would say is I would encourage anybody to go look at the actual questions that were asked at the forums, the 3 forums that we had in a row, and find anything wrong with them. I have heard that a few people have expressed their irritation, but as the chair of that committee, I take that very seriously, and nobody has reached out to me, nobody has expressed those concerns. Not saying that they're not valid concerns, but I think that if you're willing to make a point that I have a problem with something, you need to own up to it. You need to come to the source and say, hey, I think this was wrong.
But did you ask about Israel during those questions?
We didn't ask anything in any of the forums, no, because that was not a topic.
And that was my concern, because the person that's Jewish didn't get ran against. But you said, hey, if she runs, I'll bring up the Israel question.
Well,
and that, for me, that was the part that's like, whoa.
I think in that context, and unfortunately, and I hate to say this, if you listen to how Cody speaks of that individual, it's very poorly.
Yes.
She speaks about the Rockwall GOP very poorly, says, she's willing to burn the whole thing to the ground. And I mean, it's quite unfortunate calling your even look. I'm sure all of us are lean the same way politically. I'm sure we can find some things. I'm not even talking about Israel right now. I think that the three of us could find some things that we might slightly disagree on. Some of my best conversations that I have with people are on the issue of school choice, and everybody wants to change the way maybe school funding happens, but they didn't like the way the school choice thing. Those are great.
We've had so many of those.
Yeah, excuse me. So we could all share some disagreements there. Some areas where we agree, some parts where we disagree. The issue, I think, in that particular race is if that was going to be an issue, well, then of course we would discuss it. I'm not going to shy away from something because it might make somebody uncomfortable, which is the reason why Ryan Binkley got some amnesty and illegal immigration questions, which is why Paul Bondar and Jay Yarborough got, you ran you ran recently and you lost. Are you just kind of hopping around until you see? They're pointed questions, don't get me wrong. Given that was not a race that materialized, there was no real platform with which to discuss that particular issue.
So you're saying there's a complete separation between the ethnicity of being Jewish and that conversation?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that the conversation would have been, and I would say in defense of even Codi here, that was a conversation toward the end of it where the discussion of what does it truly mean to be America first, if that brings up, and really being the chair of the Republican Party, you kind of cover all the platforms. We didn't ask any of the congressional District 32 candidates. We didn't ask them anything on, well, what do you think about local zoning? Well, that's not in their jurisdiction. If you're running for the big job that's going to cover pretty much anything that might be on that plank, well, America First is on there. But asking the question again, I can simultaneously hold the view that I think it's despicable how Codi spoke of this individual, but I also think that the question might need to be asked, especially because many young people are asking that question right now. What is our involvement? I mean, and again, not to get too much into foreign policy right now, but even when you look at our involvement in Iran right now, lots of people are going, is this, and I'm not making a comment here to be sure, but people are asking the questions. Is this just another foreign war we're now involved in? Several Americans have died now. Is it worth it? All those are great questions. I think that there are a lot of people, me included, that have said, well, wait a minute, should we make sure that we're doing the right thing? And somebody can mean, well, what do you mean? You don't mean we should help our allies? Well, no, hold on. It doesn't mean that. We need to flesh this out. Do I think that Codi spoke of it in our conversation the right way? Absolutely not. But do I think that there are valid questions that could have come from what it means to be America first? Absolutely.
But my question is, why would you ask that individual about Israel? Is it just because she's Jewish?
Oh, no. If that were a question that she wanted to ask or bring up, but that's a general question that I think would correspond with anything as it relates to foreign policy right now. Okay. And again, not to get too much into the weeds, but that would be something where I don't know if you noticed that we on the forums we allowed candidates to ask each other questions in some of those forums. We tried that new this year, which I think was a huge success. Yeah, we had a lot of people who talked about liking that. If that were extended to this particular race that didn't need to materialize, I think that there's I think that was a question that could have been asked. I would not have stopped that question from being asked. But I will say the idea that we would have only asked that question because of somebody's ethnicity is flat out wrong.
Okay. Did the Rockwell GOP say anything to you about that part of the recording? Any concern about that?
Well, while we discussed what was said on the recording, there's been no action or anything like you need to step down or you need to step away or that was wildly inappropriate. I think that at the end of the day, there's a recognition that. And again, I didn't want to come on here trying to embarrass people or belittle people or anything like that. But if you listen to that recording and come away with this is what was said about a particular person and a question that might be asked about the forum, if that's your biggest takeaway, then I would respectfully ask somebody to go listen to the person who is also talking about what their plans would be to do if they didn't get their way with the entire Republican Party. And I think that's where we're seeing a little bit more of this, maybe this is why the community has come together and worked on a recall against Codi.
All right. Thanks for addressing that.
Of course, absolutely.
And then another thing that Codi brought up, and she said she felt like things changed was the whole DPS chief termination. What are your thoughts on that? Did that have anything to do with? Do you think that has something to do with the recall? She said that relationships started changing right after that. So, what are your thoughts on that?
To be clear, I would agree 100% with the statement that after the DPS, our relationship changed. Was that part of why this recall? Was this part of why I got involved with the recall? No. Yep. We would have disagreements on what happens with the DPS. We could have disagreements with budgeting. We could have disagreements with a bunch of things. Politics gets messy. People have disagreements all the time, and that's totally okay. For me, there's a and I'm not even saying it's 50-50, but part of being a good representative is what you do behind the dais. Part of that is what you do, meaning behind it when you're doing official city business. Part of it is what you do when you're off the dais. Not off as in you're not elected anymore, but off as in when you're in the community, when you're talking to people. And I think that while we clearly had our disagreements on some of how that issue played out, that is an issue that if there are major problems with how specifically that worked itself out, that would be something that we do as a council. We discuss, we decide. That really didn't change my view of, just because of crusades or causes that she's supported in the past, even that I vehemently disagreed with, that were already said and done with other groups in our community. I won't go into all the details. I think people will know. People who watch this, who kind of know what's been going on, will know what I'm talking about. But those kinds of things had already occurred. But I mean, in May when I was sworn in, we had a great working relationship and went on and it was great. I think that there's a point where you say, okay, well, I don't agree with you on that policy, and man, it really changed things in Fate, or it really showed this or showed that. But I think that's I can keep that on the this is Fate city business side, and then working over here and saying, no, you don't get to threaten people and have me say, well, I guess that's just who someone is. Mm-hmm. That wasn't going to fly with me as a citizen.
Yeah. Because you look at it. You mentioned they had allegations against you. There was an investigation, and there was nothing found. Obviously, they had an investigation on this, and there were some things found apparently. And I guess that was the big difference of opinion, that some city council members did not agree with the termination, and others did. And so I guess the only thing that would be brought up with that is, I mean, if somebody does get terminated, there seems to have been something there, and we don't know what it is. I don't know if anybody other than people that are involved know really what happened. I just know of that there was an investigation.
It was hard. It's hard to get info,
right? And then the other thing,
people's comments on Facebook,
right? Exactly. And then you mentioned one thing, and to defend the people that are the citizens, you say, well, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that are unbecoming. How do those citizens know of those things if they're not seeing them? You know what I'm saying? Like, these are things that are, okay, we can't see that. So how do we get around that where, because I'm assuming you don't want to be like, hey, here's what happened behind. You're not supposed to do that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so how do you get around that where you say you're doing it as a citizen, but some of these things are because you're mayor, these things that are going on.
Well, while I appreciate that concern, no part of me acting as a citizen on this recall effort has been using mayoral information that I have exclusively as the mayor. This is, and I'll say this too from a standpoint of, there's kind of, I would say there's behind the scenes in city government, right? When we're working on contracts or negotiations with a business entity or something like that, things that are discussed in executive session that can't be brought to light. There's that kind of behind the scenes, right? Okay. Then there's also, I would say, the behind the scenes where the average citizen might just not know. Not that it's hidden.
And that's what I wanted to ask.
But they might just not know.
Right.
For example, during our signature collection process, the vast majority of the over 400 people that signed, sought us out. There was no door-to-door campaign where we said, okay, here are, you're going to hit these 100 homes. They're going to, as soon as it became aware in the community, the people who had a desire to sign it showed up to sign it.
It was not difficult. Is what I'm hearing.
Right. Well, it seemed like it got pretty quick.
It was quick.
But, and it was. And here's the thing. Some people did ask. They said, so y'all are doing a recall. If so-and-so was, met at somebody's house to sign it and somebody was up front, what are y'all doing? Well, this, you explain the situation. And they said, well, tell me about it. What's going on? There were some people that this is what happened. And they said, well, I don't think that's recall worthy. Thank you very much. And we moved on. There was no trying to convince somebody, but there was definitely there were also people who said, well, and you show them a page or two of screenshots and they go, our city council member says that to people? Yes, unfortunately. Had never known that before, but then thought, okay, well, I want to sign because I think that's wildly inappropriate. Just like for the recall that's against me, if there are people who would go, well, I voted for Andrew. I think he's doing okay right now. If somebody shows them something, whether it's true or not, but if somebody shows them, oh, he violated the charter, did that? What? No, you can't violate the charter. That's if you want to be a mayor, if you want to be the elected official, you can't. So there's that behind the scenes too that I think is important to note. I will say, and I will argue this faithfully, that my role as mayor and my role as a citizen in this, I have kept completely separate from each other. The things that citizens might not have known that I or others have made them aware of are not things that are specific to the city. It would be things like, I didn't know that was said online, or I didn't know that's what happened.
And that's
that
all
is
I wanted
public
to see.
knowledge.
Yeah, okay. Right. Because these are things that citizens could see if they looked into it. Okay. Okay.
We have a couple of questions.
All right.
First, from our buddy Jeffrey Lyons.
Okay. Oh, Jeffrey's all involved.
Yes.
He had one for Cody. Now he's got one for Andrew.
Yeah, so this is very similar. So he said, I'm here to ask the hard questions. What is the best restaurant in Fate? Fighting words.
As a mayor, can you say that?
Now we're really getting into
Now
trouble.
we're getting
my goodness.
controversial here.
Let me say this. There are 5 members of my family, and each of them have a specific restaurant that they love in Fate. So I would say if you're asking me, Andrew Greenberg, as a representative of my family, we like
mayor.
all of them. We like all of them because those are the ones we frequent. But but no, it really is. And I'll take a moment to just kind of plug what our downtown is becoming and how that's growing and looking awesome. We have the beautiful Sauce and Vine. I'm sure you guys have been there yet. Okay, wonderful,
It is beautiful.
wonderful restaurant there. We've gone to, and again, this is just, I'm talking about in that little downtown area. We've got Red Dirt Social, delicious breakfast. They won Best Breakfast. They won that award, which is phenomenal. We're excited. Wings Over Fate just opened. In fact, this guy liked this area so much that he moved. I mean, this is his headquarters. This is his flagship ship now, and I can either confirm or deny, but he said it was because of me that I was an awesome mayor, so I just will, I don't know where the documentation is on that, but it happened.
Take credit for that.
But we have our coffee shop that's right there, Dark Ritual, and then of course our ice cream. I will absolutely say that I have gained weight eating the ice cream from It's Fate Creamery. It's just ridiculous how good it is. I think I don't know, but we live in the neighborhood right off of downtown. So summers, being an educator, I'm off. My wife stays home with our girls. We'll be sitting around and we'll be like, I don't know, I'm kind of bored. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Well, why don't we walk to the ice cream shop? Well, by God, that's the best thing I've heard all day.
And you can justify it by we
That's
walked.
right. That's
we
right.
walked, so we're going to walk off
Now-
all that ice cream.
Now I could probably better justify it if I was getting the small. But I get in there and I've worked up an appetite now, and I'm hot, especially in the summer, and I'm like, you know what? That extra large looks really good, and I'll eat all of that, and I'll work really hard later today. I've got to mow the yard later.
You deserve it.
That's right.
That's another part
That's
of it.
right.
You deserve it. Yeah.
That's right. But
Jeffrey
really,
always has those hardcore questions that really get to the root of the
He's
problem.
trying to get me in trouble, it sounds like.
Now, this is the second part of his question, which is very poignant, and you touched on it earlier. Would y'all ever consider getting lunch together, you and Cody, trying to rehash some peace between one another for the good of the city at this point? Or is there just absolutely no going back? Will you ever, or will we never be remotely friendly again? So I think that's a concern of a lot of people.
I think that's great, and I would say I am proud of both Cody and my professional relationship when we're behind the dais. I don't think you can find any example where either of us were inappropriate or rude or cut anybody off as the leader of the meetings, as the one who runs the meetings. You cannot find an example where I tried to silence her or keep her from speaking. She hasn't interrupted me or she hasn't come after me. There have been some things that are said that are definitely, read in such a way or said in such a way to prove a point, which I think is great. But as far as that, as far as being cordial, I don't. If we both go to a city event together, if we're both seated at a table, citizens or elected officials of fate, I have no issue that we would be completely cordial and that we're not going to engage in any kind of fighting or bickering or raising our voices or anything like that.
No Jerry Springer.
No, absolutely not. As far as would we sit down and have lunch? That one's a little bit more difficult. So again, and I mentioned to you guys, I played the Nutcracker in my daughter's ballet. I love that. It's something I love doing. My wife told Cody about that when we were still getting along and kind of shared it as a special family moment. And Cody has used that online against me multiple times, has indicated that by me being involved in that their problems. I'm sure you can a man doing ballet. Okay, and
she seems to enjoy going after manhood a lot.
Well, and I think there's a point where I would look at that and I would ask, is there something to be gained or gleaned from this? If I felt like it was necessary for the betterment of the city, sure. And I think there would be okay, come on, we have to do this. But and I know that I've heard from some people that has said, she's wanted to sit down with me. I told her at a meeting that I would sit down with her, and it just never has come up like that. It's not that I wouldn't. I would just want to make sure it wasn't a chance to insult or mock or demean or threaten. Those are the things I would worry most about. If there was a genuine desire, sure, but I don't think that desire exists.
That's fair.
There's one other question that came for you. It came on our website. It is from Kelly G. She didn't give her full name. Kelly G.
Kenny G, possibly?
Well, I was just about to say, is she into some smooth jazz? Is that going to be our outro today? I think that would be really good.
Okay. And I feel like we are just attacking you, but
you're
you're obviously you're good at handling yourself.
I am, and I'm not just saying, I know it's a campaign slogan that everybody says, but transparency is important. Yeah. And a lot of times, one thing that frustrates me about social media is not that somebody can air what they want to say. It's that you can't possibly go and pick up every single time you're tagged in every single comment. And so if you respond to 2 or 3 and then you ignore that one, it's, he's ignoring the hard questions. Yeah. If you ignore all of them, then it's just, you're nowhere to be found. If you answer every single one of them, then I don't see my kids or my wife at night, and they're going to bed without their father tucking them in and reading them a bedtime story.
Getting ice cream
and
without
so you can't. And so these kinds of questions, I encourage this. In fact, I will say, I wish more people would either, if they want to know specifically, social media is easy. You could find my Facebook Messenger, my city phone. I know a lot of this isn't necessarily role of mayor kind of stuff, but you can find that information out online, and you can call, text, email, and you'd be surprised how it's crickets. Not a lot of people will come to me and ask questions, but they'll certainly either say things online, or they'll use public comment to come and kind of, jab you, knowing that we can't say anything back. And I think that's unfortunate, but please ask away.
Sounds like speculation or rumor, but she said, I saw someone post in a Facebook group this allegation. I would like to know if there is a plan behind the scenes by you and others, Andrew, I'm assuming she means, to fire the current city manager, Michael Kovacs, and then install the recently terminated DPS chief as the interim city manager. So is that a rumor?
So I heard this too. Yeah, okay. There's no plans to do that. There's no talk about that. And in fact, I don't know when this is going to air, but I'll say it out here. Our city manager for our March 23rd, is that Monday, March 23rd meeting? I think that's it.
Yes.
He is on the executive session agenda, and and so is our city secretary. And this was part of the annual review, annual performance process being discussed. And so this was not put on by, from my understanding, it was not put on by any council member as much as it is, hey, it's this time every year that we do this kind of thing. I know there's already some chatter online about, see, they're doing it. And again, it's just, you want to be like, doing what? Who are you hearing this from?
And it's these new anonymous. They're
Which I
allowing
think,
this.
I
don't
think
like
is
that.
a.
If you're going to say something,
that's
have the balls to give your name.
That's exactly right.
Come on.
I think that is terrible. But no, there is not a plan to fire our city manager and install our former DPS chief
There it
as
is,
the
Kelly
interim.
G.
Yeah.
Kelly G, there's your answer.
That is not.
How great would it have been if Andrew would have said, yeah, that's the exact plan. How did she know?
She's got it.
How did she know? I mean, yeah,
Okay.
we want to install all these people.
Yeah.
That's what we do. Yeah, you can't do that's so funny. But man, yeah. And you know, we talk about this and you haven't seen it. It will be posted to our broadcast with Cody too. I mean, we came at her and asked her a lot of hard things because and I'm sure you know there was a lot of things we could ask her.
We started with what she said about you.
Yeah, we started with that conversation, which was like 5 years ago, and there it was. Jay posted. We have to rehash that and go through that. Yeah, and so anyway,
I just wanted to see your talk. I wanted to see your response to say, "Pull your skirt up."
Yeah. Everybody gets that from her apparently. I want to ask you something just political wise that made me think of this as you were talking about that you can't get all the answers on social media and you can't say and all this. This is way off the subject, but I just wanted your opinion.
It's all right.
The thing that drives me crazy we have hearings constantly now, and this is kind of about the recall thing a little bit too. It seems like now all we do is go after the other guys and and then we have a hearing. We got all these things, you know, they don't agree with me. So we're going to call them out and we're going to do stuff. What drives me crazy when I watch these hearings are when you have whoever's being investigated in the hearing or is appearing at the hearing. I just want a yes or no answer. And then they give you this question that is, you
I
know,
love watching
have you
those.
stopped beating your wife kind of question. You know, what can we do about those kind of things? Because both sides do it, you know.
But it's theater. There's nothing we can do but watch the show.
But that's where
Don't insult theater. What's wrong with you?
True. That's a good
point. That's a good point. We need to go back into the Blues Brothers conversation. No. And so, but what, I mean, I know locally we don't do it as much, you know, if at all, but it seems to be that we're going in a direction of, as you said, we're going more towards theater than actually getting answers and solving the problems. What's your thoughts on that? And what can we do about those kind of things?
I think this is a result of people forming a conclusion in their mind and asking a question based on that. Mm-hmm. So, for example, whether you're talking about a recall, whether you're talking about what's going on in Washington and doing hearings there, unfortunately, I think that oftentimes, and to your point on how questions are worded, if you word something in the wrong way, well, I might have to push back against it instead of having an opportunity to say, okay, either tell us kind of what happened and then let us ask questions based on that, or asking clarifying questions about it before it necessarily becomes an interrogation or used for a sound bite. And I think that's where again, and I talk to my students about this all the time, so it's awesome. I love it. But that's where, if we're going to have representative government, that can't just mean, well, I voted and then I went like this.
Right.
For the next 4 years, right?
Right.
We have to be involved, but it can't just be involved like we're going, boy, I can't wait to just get you, or oh, the moment you mess up, I'm coming after you. It has to be a genuine engagement, and we just don't have that right now.
No.
Because everything's either a gotcha or everything's either a if the Republicans are in charge of the Senate, then they're going to ask the witness questions, and people are going to ask, I mean, it becomes about snipping something down for your next election. Nobody really knows what's going on, but boy, we know we hate the other guy, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's not going to change, because I've said before, if you want a different kind of Washington, you've got to send a different kind of candidate. Mm-hmm. And the only way we send that different kind of candidate is if we, the people, decide we want to send somebody different.
Well, and that kind of leads to where we even compared Cody to this. The thing that was refreshing about Trump was he was not the usual politician guy. He came out there, and we all conservatives, a majority back in 15 and 16 when he was running. Hey, all these people up here are bought. You know, he would say those things that we've always wanted a candidate to say, and he said it.
Yeah.
And we loved it. I did, and it was
absolutely,
great.
absolutely.
And he comes in there and he says his mind, and he does to the story. And I said this in our last podcast. I voted for Trump. I like his policies, a majority of them. But then there's also a part of Trump where you're like, okay, just stop. You've made your point. Let's just not, and he'll demean and he'll call names and he'll do that. I think that Codi kind of rode that a little bit, seeing that is a different way that we're doing politics now. Jasmine Crockett does it on the other side, or did. She's going to be done soon. I feel like also that the Democrats, and I'm sure I'm biased on this, but when you see the people that are talking out of line, unbecoming, all that, it seems to be on the liberal side a lot more than the conservative side, with the way they drop F-bombs and they do all that stuff and they cuss. They just tell the president to F off now. Yeah. You didn't do that before. What can we do? And you just mentioned it. You got to get that kind of person into office, but I don't know if we can, because there's a lot of people we'd like in office that you mentioned before. They ain't going to run because they don't want to deal with that junk.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I'm involved with a ton of political campaigns. I'm never running because I see what y'all have to deal with.
You see it all. It's horrible.
Yeah, people say, why don't you ever run? Because it's great behind the scenes back here. Let y'all do the battle. I'll be the guy in the back going, yeah, go over there, whatever. So at some point, we're going to have to make it. And to me, local government, and that's why I'm bringing it to you, local government is the closest, I think, is, if you look at it now, seems to me that local government is more of what our founding fathers had envisioned for government, as opposed to our federal government now, because it's become all these sections and all these things. But local government, we still have, a lot of the things that they envisioned that you don't necessarily. There's a lot of offices you run for in local government that it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. You're just running because of your ideas or what you want to do or what you want to change or whatever. So what can be done there?
So this is probably pretty controversial, but this is the way I view how do we change the trajectory, because that's essentially what we're talking about here, right? It's changing that trajectory.
You said it a lot better than me in 10 minutes.
He's got good words.
Yeah.
He went to college.
I need to start learning. I went to Jay. I went to college too, but it was Texas State, so it didn't really count. But go ahead. All right.
So I think one of the big problems that we have right now is we push people to vote, to get registered to vote, get out there and vote. That you're right. We celebrate that. But we don't accompany that with make sure you know what you're voting for. Make sure you know the candidates. Make sure you understand the role of the office with which you're voting for somebody. Instead, what we see, and I get mad at people on my side of the aisle, people on the opposite, where it's like, look, I think it was Michelle Obama who said this. But at one point she said, this was years ago, she said, look, it doesn't matter if you don't know everything, just get out and vote. And I look at that and say, that's terrible advice. It is terrible. It is terrible advice to go into a room full of people and just say, hey, who's not registered? Okay, well, you get a registration card and you get a registration. That's a terrible way to look at it. And here's my example. Because as we approach, and we're moving more and more toward a direct democracy when we do that, because then every single decision that's made is if the majority didn't like this, then we immediately adjust course and do something else, to the point that we're now talking about things that even 50 years ago wouldn't have even been mentioned in government to talk about. But it's like, hey, this is what the majority wants, so by all means the majority should get it. And I tell my students, I say, if that's our number one ethic, why not just embrace a full democracy? Right. Because then whatever the reason, did 50% plus one want it? Boy, we should be happy. We should say democracy prevailed. Right. But we're not a democracy. We're a republic. What governs us, our supreme ethic, is the law. And we're all under that law. And so telling people, and this is the example I use. I don't know that it's the best analogy, but I'm saying it here so that we officially have a record that I've said it. And if it hasn't been brought up anywhere else yet, you heard it here first, kind of thing. But give me another example where you would want a bunch of uninformed people deciding something for you. Right. Your doctor comes and says, hey, you need this surgery. You know what? I'm going to ask those people what they think.
Right.
They don't have any clue what's going on, but by all means, they have a thought. they watched a Netflix documentary one time, or they follow, Dr. So-and-so on Instagram.
Right.
We wouldn't want that. You're a mortgage broker. You know what? Hey, thanks, Jay, but I'm going to go ask those people outside. I'm just going to go down to the McDonald's and I'm going to ask them what they think about all this. If they think this contract is good, or if they think this, whatever the case may be. We don't want to do that with anything else. But boy, we celebrate that when it comes to voting. Just get out there. It doesn't matter. Just get out there and vote because it's your right. Well, the problem is, the Constitution has no affirmative right to vote listed in there. We have a bunch of amendments that prohibit ways of denying people the right to vote. But our founders didn't believe that voting by virtue of it just being out there and checking a box was the number one thing. It was about liberty. It was about those rights that we have. It was about limited government. And so when we say more and more people, hey, go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you know anything or not. What do you think is a good idea? What do you think? But we're not anchoring that in something. We're not anchoring it in constitutionalism. We're not anchoring it in the rule of law. We get to a point where now, if I want to vote for somebody who's going to cuss out the other side,
right,
we get that.
Yeah. And that goes back to people get uptight when they talk about, back in the early days, it was just landowners, and they could, because they were the ones that had stakes and they were involved,
right?
And so I think it's a great point that once you vote, you're not done. You got to stay informed, and you got to keep going and make sure that things are going, because you'll be shocked at times that somebody you vote for, then you kind of follow and you kind of go, I ain't what I voted for. A lot of people are saying that about Trump right now. Some people are saying that about Trump. Yeah. So stay involved and keep going. And so, I
like to ask people, and again, this is probably me being a little, pokey because I'm a college professor and I teach this stuff. But I'll sometimes ask people and I'll say, hey, who is your representative? And they'll say, oh gosh, you shouldn't ask me that. I don't know. And I'll ask them different things. And I'll say, well, hey, if I say, do you follow it? Have you been following what's going on? No, I don't really follow that. I don't do anything. I say, well, would you be okay if we just put together like a benevolent kingship? Like, let's kind of do away with it, and we'll just have somebody's in charge, but he will do right by the people and all that. It's no, absolutely not. Are you kidding me? No, absolutely not. Right. We are a representative democracy. And but you don't know anything about it. You don't seem to care to get to know about it. So come on, there has to be, and to be clear, I don't have the answer to bridging that disconnect. I just see that we have to figure out a way to bridge that disconnect.
Well, don't you also think
change this?
When you see and it's just, and it may not be that way, but it feels that way. As a conservative, you always feel like when you're watching anything, movies, television, you're outnumbered. You're not represented, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so all the get out and vote people commercials are all the liberals making those. And it almost feels like, hey, get out and vote Democrat is what they're saying, as opposed to really get out and vote. Yeah. And you always sit there going, we need some conservatives out there telling them to do it and to follow up in what you're doing. But
absolutely.
That's so funny. Yeah. Well, man, this has been great. I'm glad you came.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here. Absolutely.
You're very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
About the government and the way it works, and that's important because I think a lot of people get into it who are not.
I agree. I'd like to go. I'd go to your class. I would enjoy your class.
Come on,
we talked about that. You teach at Mesquite.
So that's where I used to teach. So I teach for Dallas College now, formerly Dallas County Community College.
Right. Okay. So Dallas College.
I teach for them, and then I do a little bit of adjunct work with Collin College, and actually have an opportunity in the spring to teach some government classes right here at the Gene Burton Center.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
That is hugely awesome. Just because I'll end up having students from Fate in my class, and not just Fate, but Rockwall County. In fact, last year, I hadn't been elected yet, but last year toward the end, we did my city manager helped me open up City Hall, Fate City Hall. We have a beautiful City Hall. If you haven't been in there, you need to go see it. Okay. Council chambers are stunning. And so I actually took 2 of my classes to City Hall and had several of the other newly elected officials in Rockwall. I know we had Heath. I'm trying to think if we had somebody from McClendon Chisholm there. But we had some of those newly electeds, and we had kind of a general overview of what local government does.
I love that.
And then I broke the students up into their groups, and so we had the Heath kids went to talk to a new Heath City Council member elect. We'll call it. Rockwall did with Rockwall. Those that lived in Fate came over with me. Had a few other council members there, and so I love doing that kind of thing because it makes it relevant. Think about how many students pass by, and again, anywhere in Rockwall County, not just Fate. They pass by City Hall. never stepped foot in
No.
there, and you end up having you turn 18 and you don't even know the first thing about local government. And I'm not saying I joke with my students all the time. Look, my goal at the end of this year is not to get you to want to major in political science, but then I go, but if you do, then it means I've done my job really well.
Yeah, for sure.
Joke with them about that, but just to have a better understanding, and again, just as a quick thing too, one thing that has really piqued their interest is I show them a picture of our current CIA director, John Ratcliffe. And I'll say, this is the director of the CIA. And they think that's cool just because it's the director of the CIA. And I said, you guys are closer to him than you probably think. And they'll be like, what? And so then it's on his Wikipedia page. I'll scroll down and Director of National Intelligence, Trump's first term. But then it shows where he was our congressman for the 4th Congressional District. And so I click on that image of the district. It's the huge district. I mean, it's changed now. We're in 32, but it's that little itty bitty Rockwall County. And then the rest, but I say, but look, what's this right here? And they're like, oh, that's Rockwall County. So yeah, he did represent us. I'm like, yeah, you know what he did before that? So I go back to the Wikipedia page and I scroll down, Mayor of Heath. And they're like, what? Oh my gosh, are you serious? And I goes, yeah, so the director of the CIA knows what you're doing right now. And so we have a lot of fun with that. But you think about Scott Turner. Scott Turner's the same way, used to be our state rep, and now he's a cabinet official. Katrina Pearson, very involved both at the federal level, but then also right here, our current HD 33. And so we have so much that's a way to get them kind of involved and get them thinking about it. But then when you actually plug them in, I need to talk to some of our county officials. I'd love to do a tour of the commissioner's court, and those happen during the day. And so if I can figure out a way to move my classes around, go see a JP court. I mean, I've had some of our people come speak to him. Commissioner John Stacy. I've had Kenda Culpepper from the district attorney's office. She's come in. Mark Russo, a JP. So a lot of these county people I have come in too, and I really like showing them like, hey, this is directly responsive to you right here. This isn't Washington D.C. This isn't who you're watching on cable news. These are people that you have probably passed in the grocery store at one point or the other. You just didn't know who they were.
Well, and also next time when you mention John Ratcliffe, mention that Q-Bell Design did his campaign. So just throw out, if you can squeeze that in, always
responsible for
always
himself.
marketing, always marketing.
In our campaigns and elections unit that we go over, hey, that's absolutely. It's those campaigns that win that end up changing the course of history. So
my favorite thing about John was when he first ran for mayor, he calls me up. I didn't know John at the time. And he calls me up and he goes, I'd like you to do the campaign. Okay, great. And most of the time when somebody runs, they have their photos made. You go and find a photographer and they make your photos. You always get your different photos done. Like you have your suit shots and you have your family shot. You got your casual shots, and I need some shots of you around the community and all that stuff. So John calls and says, man, I just got one shot. It's me and the wife and the kids in our front yard before we go to the 4th of July parade. That's all we had. That's all he wanted to use.
Yeah.
All right. So I pop it on there and I make it work, and lo and behold, that was one of the best campaigns I'd ever been involved with, and he was great, and I got to know, he's just such a good guy. A guest here on Rock 30,
and you showed that. You showed that.
Yeah,
picture. It was great.
Yeah.
One quick thing before we go, and I always think about this: is how is your family through all this? There's people slinging mud, and you signed up for it and they didn't. And I always think about politicians' families when things like this start happening. It's got to be hard, and I would be worried about my daughters and my wife. How is that?
Well, fortunately, my 3 daughters are nowhere near social media right now.
Okay.
And so they really don't know of anything going
It's
on.
probably very smart.
Yeah.
When they find out, how eye-opening will that be when they find out what dad was involved in?
I have not thought about how to broach that subject eventually, but I'm looking at it going,
I'm sure it'll be broached by somebody else at some
the more
point.
that this, the more that this happens, and the more this unfolds, and now you're going to be 17 before you get a cell phone, and now you're going to be 18, and now I'm going to wait till you get married and your husband wants to buy you a cell phone.
Facebook.
Yeah, right.
That's funny.
It has been difficult for my wife. I think it's and I think she looks at it often as, she knows me, of course, and so when people will. If somebody doesn't like me, that's one thing, because you're not going to be liked by everybody. But it's another thing when you can tell somebody's made a judgment about you without knowing all the facts, or I heard this from so-and-so, so it must be true. Yeah. That has been probably the hardest thing. Fortunately, she has a great group. We go to an amazing church. We go to First Baptist Church. I've got a group of guys that pour into me. She's got a group of ladies that
First
pour
Baptist
into her.
Rockwall?
First Baptist Rockwall.
Right there.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Absolutely. We should have done this podcast podcast just you and me.
I know.
We didn't need him. Yeah.
Jay.
But also, I will say too, being a follower of Christ, I've had ups and downs with it. You know, when you think about it, but I just say, Lord, I'm here to do your will, whether that means that my path or what I've been put on prevails, whether it means I don't prevail.
Right.
Don't allow me to try and make it about me. Ultimately, your will be done, and give me a piece about it. Mm-hmm. And as long as that happens, then I'm good to go.
There you go. That's great. That's great. Real quick, one other thing, and then we'll step away. You talk about youth being involved. I think one positive thing about the social media is I look at people, my kids included, but when I taught high school, I taught for 2 years. I taught graphic design. And I was amazed at how uneducated they were in some things, but that they knew so much more going on in the world than I did at that age because of social media. And do you see that anywhere? That seems like young people probably just by naturally absorbing, because the politics are on your phone constantly now. They weren't when we were growing up. And so you had to go search it out. Do you see that at all?
In terms of young people just knowing
more about what's going on.
And I'll say this, and this is going to take a nosedive in terms of the topic, but finding out I was in the middle of teaching a class when I found out that Charlie Kirk was shot. Mm-hmm. And how was it? It was because a group, and here was the kicker. It's funny you mentioned this. I asked, well, how do you know? And one of the kids said Twitter. Mm-hmm. And I said, who's talking about this on Twitter? And it was a news site. Like they had, I guess, chosen to follow a news site, or at least somebody had posted it. And so I was like, good for you, which has changed the way sometimes I teach our media topics. Good. And when we talk about, what's agenda setting and priming and framing and get to look at all that. But yeah, I think that there's absolutely a point where some the accounts I follow on X, now I guess we should call it X.
I still say Twitter.
Yeah, I know, right? Because when you say so and so tweeted something, what do you say? So and so X'd it.
Yeah, we didn't exit. Yeah,
right. Talk about confusion. But I follow some of those just because it is quick and it gets you there.
It's the quickest
the
way.
hard part now as an educator is, okay, you have the information. Now what do you do with it? Put it in its proper context.
Who you
understand?
Get it from.
Right. Understand what it means. And so that's big. But yeah, I think that you're saying, it's not just Amber Alerts. Everybody's phone goes off at the same time, so we know, everybody got an Amber Alert.
Right.
But when you think about all the other information that's out there is also pinging all of our phones, their phones at the same time, and you realize, man, we're bombarded with it. Yeah. So what do we do about it?
Yeah. That's great. That's great, man. We appreciate it.
Hey, absolutely. Good to be
here. I know
here.
this is tough for you and everything. Appreciate you coming in and getting your side to it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. I appreciate the opportunity. And again, if I would say if this part makes it, if somebody wants to reach out to me, talk to me directly about this, I'm more than happy to. I want to be very clear that this is not my involvement as the mayor of Faith. This is a citizen thing I'm doing. People are more than welcome to talk to me about mayoral stuff, but I want to make sure I'm very clear about that. But I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has at any time.
Yeah, perfect. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. Good to be here.
See you guys next time.